Hi everyone, and welcome to our Zahn Academy Quick Bite. Today's Quick Bite is mill maintenance, what you need to know. Our speakers today are from Roland DG Shape, and we have Ian O'Neill, Eastern US Sales Manager, and Juan Milano, Service Tech Representative. Thank you guys both for being here with us today. And as a reminder, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat and we will address them at the end. So now I'll turn it over to Ian and Juan.
Good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're at. Thanks for joining us again for our third installment of Quick Bites with the Zahn Roland DG Shape team. And today we're going to be talking about preventative maintenance for your mill. And I know you've all have heard me on a monthly basis talk so far this year. So I figured we'd switch it up, and who better to have here with us today from the DG Shape team but Juan Molina, who is our lead for our service with our dental mills. And he's working with these machines on a day-to-day basis, you know, helping the customers and dealers with any issues they might have. So with that, I'm going to let Juan drive, and Juan, take it away. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Appreciate it. This is very exciting to have everyone here, the DG Shape family, and spend some time with everyone. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be presenting is not what you would find in the manual or the setup guides. It's a little bit above and beyond. So hopefully this is useful information. We have various resources available, such a website, rolanddga.com. We also have a YouTube page with all the maintenance and information. So if you need anything, it's all posted online. And we also, whatever we find or we learn from you guys in the field as you're using the devices, we'll create content, documentation, knowledge, and post it online. Let me start. So first of all, one of the topics that I wanted to show, some of the resources I mentioned, we posted, like this video that we have online. We created a video on how to maintain the DCI. For me, the most important topics that discussing obviously with the machine and keeping them running continuously is the ongoing maintenance. And one of those items that kind of needs to be addressed on daily basis is the removal of zirconia from the mill. As you can see right here, suctioning everything that I could find just to remove it. Some of the tools that I use for that, and if you guys can see me on the video, a toothbrush, you know, harder bristles. It doesn't need to do anything special. Brushes of several sizes, soft bristles, so you can remove it. I use some swabs to use some greases and just clean up in some of those tight areas. Obviously, our detection jig has to be pristine, very clean, and obviously clean it as much as possible. Our detection pin, no damages or anything like that to the mill. Then I use some small brushes to get inside the collet and the spindles and just kind of maintain that. Let me move on to the next slide. And some of the points that I kind of look into are making sure that each adapter is clean. I do it daily and with a rag, and I use a mild detergent. In my case, I like Windex. I soak the rag with Windex and then clean everything off. It does a good job of removing the zirconia that attaches to everything. If you remove that zirconia as soon as possible and not start to attach to certain areas. So you can see right here, I'm pointing to the tab towards the back. There is a kind of section in there where zirconia starts to compound. You want to make sure that that area is clean. Remove it with a toothbrush and scrub it to remove everything. So that way the adapter glides correctly and attaches over to the sensor in the back. There's a magnet that holds it in place, but if there's anything that's impeding the flow, you might get an error message. So cleaning that is a very important. Next one.
I think Juan, on the topic of T-axis real quick, one of the reasons that the T-axis or the storage chamber might get dirty is poor suction inside of your mill. So it's important to maintain that suction. Make sure you're changing bags. If you have poor suction, you're going to end up with milling debris on your actual block and adapter itself. So when it's transferred in, it kind of falls off and contaminates that milling chamber. So by having optimal suction at all times, you're actually going to have a cleaner working piece when it moves back into the storage chamber. So keep an eye on your suction units as well.
Correct. Thank you, and I appreciate it. A couple of the topics looking at the inside of at least the disc chamber, is right below it. There is a set of 4 screws. You don't have to release, you just release them and that glides out. What you want to do once you have that open is look at it, make sure that the gear is not compounding with zirconia, and with a small vacuum kind of clean inside that area out. That would help out the slider bars that make the traverser move from the disc chamber over to the milling chamber, and it will glide better, preventing any issues. Look at inspect the sensors. If you see any kind of buildup of zirconia, use a small little brush and clean it out. That way everything's in good shape. As you can see right here, I'm pointing towards the gear. That's where you kind of want to see if that gear is there's a large amount of zirconia. Once again, zirconia maintenance will keep your machine, remove that, you keep it working very well. We use some lubes, and I put the part numbers in here, which you can purchase from us from our store directly, or you can purchase from your distributor. And the part numbers for those, this is a mild lube, which I use to lube the rails on the side, so that way it goes up and down your lift axis. And then for the ball screws, remove any buildup of zirconia. There's a bottom, the top. Add a little dab of lube with the swab and clean, and just glide it up and down. That should help it out. That's a good PM visit, something you will not find on the documentation online. So good to know. All right, so from here we did a little bit of TL and the traverser and the lift axis maintenance. I'm going to move on over to our next topic, which is the detection pin. Very important. The detection pin has to be the right length. And here, as you can tell, I gave you basically 2 methods of how to approach that. Using calipers, you can measure the distance. This information is also found on the setup guide. So if you want to know exactly the dimensions and you want to measure it, it's right there. Or using the adapter holder or placer, you can actually place it correctly into the adapter. So you can see we just align it to the top. Make sure that it's clean, inspect it, that there's no damages, there's not bent, there's no dings, because this is basically the way that the device knows and it auto-corrects itself. Same thing with the correction jig, which is the next topic I'm going to discuss. Okay.
This is a good thing to know. From time to time, you guys may find, something might happen to your detection pin, and if you find you have to replace your detection pin, all you're going to receive is the pin itself. So you're going to take the collar and have to put it on yourself. So this is a really great piece of information to have. You can see in that tool holder jig, the detection pin itself will go all the way to the end of that square. You're probably used to placing your cutting burr directly in the middle. So this will be slightly different from replacing a burr.
Correct. All right, I'll move on to the next topic. The auto correction jig. Let's see, I'll show you this video. This is from a unit that I found at a customer's location. Let's see if I can play it. I won't play it, of course. If you look at the pin, the detection pin right here was loose. So you want to make sure that this is tight, that the entire assembly is tight. There's no movement. And if there is, you can take this apart, clean it out, make sure that it glides correctly from right here on the edges. So clean it off. So make sure that it's in the best shape as possible when you clean it. As you can see inside the, oops, sorry. If you see inside this mill, there's quite a bit of debris and it's kind of dinged up quite a bit, probably dropped it. And you got to remember that the pin is going to go and land in certain spots. So if there's dings and it's detecting a different value, your calibrations may come off a little bit off. So make sure that the calibration jig is clean. By cleaning, I mean, you can do a daily maintenance just basically by wiping it off. You can do a monthly maintenance by removing it. So if there was a standard adapter, cleaning the entire assembly. From time to time, I use a polishing compound to make sure the aluminum is in good shape, and then clean out the entire area. I tighten the screws. There's a set of screws, 4 little screws inside, and I tighten, make sure everything's good. I place the aluminum into position and tighten the assembly. Typically what I do is when I loosen this up, there's a hook, and I'll hook it over towards the left side. So when I'm tightening, it's putting pressure. So hold it into position and tighten it diagonally, and that should basically keep you in good shape on this, on the calibration and the error correction.
If you do remove that calibration jig from the holder itself, when you put it back in, is there only one way for it to fit back in, or is it up to the end user to find the right rotation?
Yes. So the way you will know is the clamps right here. If you guys can see me, I think so. There's the clamps that face outwards, and then if you glide this and move this, there is a set of like the spacers right here that'll just land into position. So you'll know exactly how it lands into position.
Okay.
And as long as it's tight and it's gliding well, you're in good shape. All right, let me move on to the next one. Here's a kind of a tip. It's an internal tip. So, but if you're having issues with the disc changer, the assembly, and it's not detecting or it's having an error message, and you can't get past by using the regular standard notifications from vPanel, we can deactivate the disc changer, the left side of the middle, where you have the adapters, and use the 52DC or DCI as a 52D as a single unit until we get the service team out there. So the way you accomplish this is by doing Alt, pressing the buttons Alt, D, and C, which means disc changer, and then pressing the gear button, and this will allow you to see this disabled disc changer. That at that point you can use it as a single unit. If you're in the CAM software, you send the file. It doesn't matter what adapter you use. It's just gonna overwrite the G code in it, and then just send the job that you're gonna send out. Great for a temporary solution, so you get up and running until a service tech goes inside and takes a look and see what's going on with your traverser.
And that's the key. We want to make sure that, this wouldn't normally be information that any device manufacturer would want to share with anyone, but that we understand that there are situations where it might take us a couple of days to get a technician out to you, and you guys can't just stop your productions and wait for somebody to arrive. So if it's a disc changer issue, you need to keep running, and we recognize that. So that's why we decided to share this information with you.
Fantastic. And if any questions afterwards, and then you can post them up there, and I'll send you more information about these topics. Like I mentioned, we're posting some of the stuff as well on our support site, so it's available for you guys. All right, let me jump over to the next topic. Collet maintenance. Basically, be careful when you're working with the collets. They're very important pieces of equipment for the machine. As you can see right here, someone tried to pry open the collet. They probably use a vise or something like that. So just be careful when you're working with the spindles. The way we basically recommend is go into vPanel, press the open button, and then release the collet. Be very careful. You're using the detection pin, and then clean it off. You can do a little, you can blow some air in it just to remove any zirconia buildup or anything inside. This is where I use some of these brushes from the 42Ws or other brushes and clean inside the collet just to make sure everything is clean inside, as well inside the spindle. Go inside the spindle a little bit, inspect it, clean out all this area, make sure there's no debris. So the reason why we want to make sure that that collet is in good shape and it's clean is because we don't want to distort that movement, so it creates kind of spindle run out. And then after that, when it's clean and the spindle is clean as well, add a dab of lube of grease onto the top edge of the collet. That will help with movement and tightening. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Milling chamber maintenance. This is where most of the material, as you can see, will start to compound in areas like this. This is a fairly good machine that's been in use for several years. Almost a good amount of maintenance, but as I mentioned, some of the information that we have in our documentation does not explain how to maintain inside this area. So I'll just go through a couple soft topics of how to do this. Right. First things, make sure that all your screws on the mill are tight. So you have a set of screws, top, bottom, side. Just kind of make sure that with an Allen wrench, tighten them, make sure everything's good. There's no vibration or anything like that. The screws right at the top as well. We have on the 52 DC and DCI, we have a ball bearing right here that should glide and shouldn't lock up, because this basically is where that's how it's attaching the adapter right into position. So you want to make sure it's moving. You can lube it a little bit. If it's still having issues, you can call us and we can go aside and replace that component if needed. But typically, if you lube it, clean it out, you should be fine. What happens is the zirconia gets inside there and then the ball bearings lock up. So, and then will cause issues when the adapter comes in. Very important for the 52 DC and DCI.
So
there's a set of
on this point of cleaning these small little nooks and cranny areas inside of the milling chamber, some of you may already have it. I know when I was in the lab, somewhere like a hardware store will have these kits that are for a shop vac, and it's basically for auto detailing, and it fits on the end of the suction hose and has all these different bristle attachments, you know, very small ones to larger ones. Those things are, you know, you can get one of those little kits for about 10 bucks, and it works wonders inside of these machines to get all these small areas detailed. So I'd recommend picking one of those up.
Perfect. Yeah, and use it in conjunction with a nice toothbrush. It's great. I mean, it cleans everything out. Clean it out, clean the machine. When you're done milling, don't let that stuff start to compound, because it becomes more difficult. The aluminum that you see around that and the entire machine, with Windex, you'll remove the most amount. A dry rag will remove some of it. If you need to get to those components and make sure they're really clean and the aluminum, what I do is that I have isopropyl alcohol, dab it in the rag and clean it out. If I even want to get a little bit more into it and I want to, you know, impress you guys when I'm on site, I'll even use a polishing compound to make sure everything's good. Just, you know, so it removes any zirconia building up. But that's me. I like it clean. All right. A couple of the spots, the ATC and the sensor. Make sure those are clean. Because basically the detection pin is going and detecting 4 spots, as well as the top of the sensor right there. So if it's not detecting correctly, you may have some issues with milling. So make sure that's very clean. You can wipe it off, you can clean it off. The sections where you, with the tools, adapters land into position, the way I do it is I push them inwards and, you know, like push them down. So each one of those right here, I push them down. At times what I do is that I, maybe if needed, if they're not gliding up and down correctly, because it's a spring in between, is that I dab a little bit of like a, not WD-40, because I don't like that one, dries out too much. A little bit of lube, just dab it so you can press it inwards, and basically you're allowing that piece to impress when the spindle drops it into position. Because basically you have a magnet in here, holds it in place, and you want to make sure that the machine is picking up the assembly correctly. Right here, I'm showing you 2 spots that previously mentioned in the documentation of maintaining it, but you want to make sure that you clean inside. 1, vacuum everything inside the mill. So, you know, they build up zirconia and stuff like that. Use a little brush. So there is some lube here that kind of spreads out. So what you want to do is kind of wipe out the lube that in those areas where the assemblies don't glide, and remove everything as possible. Then you have the rails and the ball bearing. Make sure you can wipe any zirconia that's building up, and if you need to lube, just add a little bit of lube that I mentioned previously. Another component that really kind of we overlook, and we see that basically zirconia gets into this area and it starts to compound above the spindle and cause issues with detection. And right underneath here, if it starts to compound, the values expected from the sensors may not reach the intended parameters, and it may cause some issues. So, you know, I use a little bit of compressed air and clean it out, or a little brush and remove everything. So basically it's clean, as you can see right there. And if you wanted to do a PM visit or PM maintenance on your own, there is a ball bearing on the side of the machine, which is the X-axis. You can remove the cover. It's only 4 screws. Clean it out with a rag and remove any zirconia. You can use a little brush and then dab the grease on top of it. That will help out tremendously to, you know, glide forwards and backwards, and you can, you know, your machine will do very well. So that was some of the topics that I want to discuss. Obviously, the most important things that I kind of want you guys to do is make sure your V panel's up to date, your firmware is up to date, and the driver on your computer is up to date. Obviously, make sure that your computer is to the latest version, so that way it correlates with each other. So keep an eye out on information on our support site as well. We have the YouTube pages for maintenance and various resources to help you out.
Perfect. All right. Is that it, Juan?
Thank you. Yeah. That's
all right. We appreciate you joining us today. That was all very useful. So we're going to check really quick and see if we have any questions coming in. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in, and we've got a few minutes here to answer some of those. If it's something you think of later on, you can contact the Zahn team and they will get you in contact with us. But first question is, what is a PM visit? So Juan, you touched really quickly on a PM visit. Can you explain what that is and what that would include exactly?
So now we have a PM visit by our team. They will go on site, clean out your machine, inspect it, make sure that everything is within our values. We run a service utility, and it will just basically run aging to make sure there's no sounds or anything that's out of the ordinary. We will go inside and clean the mill. We will clean and lube every component that I mentioned in here, and make sure that everything's running well. If at one point we determine that there is an issue with the mill or something like that, we'll inform you and then let you know what needs to be replaced. And we run a set of blocks. It's a block with cubes, and then we test it to make sure that it's running correctly.
Okay, so basically it's kind of like taking your mill to the dealer, sort of like if it was your car. You know, you're getting an oil change, you're having it gone through with, you know, a 20-point inspection or whatever it might be. If your mill is running properly and you want to make sure it stays that way, it might be a great idea to have a PM visit and just make sure they're running up to spec. So you can contact the Zahn team to inquire about that pricing of having somebody come out on site. All right, so another question that we have here. Anything specific you would recommend for someone who's exclusively milling PMMA? A recommendation would be, obviously it's a different type of mess than when you're milling zirconia. You know, you're milling that fine powder, it's going everywhere. The PMMA chips are larger, tend to have a static buildup a little bit and cling to things. So it's a little more complicated to clean. The one thing you want to make sure of with PMMA is, I would suggest, and Juan, correct me if I'm wrong, every few jobs, just check your collet. You know, if you're going to start milling for the day, make sure the collet's tight. You know, with all the torque on that material, PMMA being one of the hardest materials that you're going to mill in a DG shape mill, it's very, very important to make sure that collet is tight. So that's the one thing that I would suggest there. What kind of glue do you use to lube the rails? I'm assuming they mean lube. Is there a specific, Juan, do you have the specific item number for the lubricant?
Yeah, let me go back to the presentation.
That's a good question.
And I'll put him back again to the lubes right there.
Maybe the one on the left or the right?
The one on the right. So the 100012.
So if you guys want to write that down, that is the DG shape part number for that item.
Yes.
Yeah, another point while we're talking about this is there's a bunch of accessories that come with your mill when you're purchasing it. You may lose something. You know, I know how labs are; things can walk off or disappear. So if you get to a point where something goes missing and you need it, you can't think of what it's called. You can't think of the part number. If you go on our website and you go to the type of mill that you have and click product support. There is a tab that says parts list, and what it's going to do is give you a complete diagram of every accessory that is included with a new mill. So you're going to be able to identify the picture and get the accurate name and part number to be able to order it from your dealer, like Zahn. So a good tip there, just to know where to find those part numbers in case you need them. Dan is asking questions. He's having some chipping issues. They've cleaned the rails. Dan, it's something that's tough to get into on this, but if I'll get in contact with you and get your email from the Zahn team, and we'll get your serial number and find out what you have going on. But what I would recommend to you right off the bat is make sure you have a call in to your support team if it's through Zahn, and have them escalate a ticket to us. That ticket's going to give us all the information that we need to be able to start looking into your issue. Okay, just a quick check on time. Might have time for one more. So let's see. All right, we got one. It says, how long will that PM visit last? Juan, do we have any idea how long, once somebody comes on site for the PM visit, how long they can expect their mill to be down?
Typically, if it's a 52 DC DCI, maybe a couple of hours. If it's a 52D, maybe an hour to two tops. It depends also on how well the machine has been maintained. If it's been clean and they're just going to do kind of an inspection, it should be fairly fast. It just depends on the machine. But yeah, anywhere between 2 to 4 hours for a DCI and any up to 2 hours on a 52D.
And I'll mention really quickly, we do have our new extended warranty program, which you can find out more information and pricing on through Zahn. If you have a mill from us that's currently under its standard 2-year warranty, you can extend to 3, 4, or 5 years. Each one of those coverages will include a PM visit with it. So that's a very nice thing to have when you extend your warranty. But with that, guys, we are officially out of time for today. So thank you all for joining us. Juan, thank you for joining me today and helping with this topic. And maybe we'll have you on again soon to go over some
Absolutely.
other. All right,
Very
everybody.
fun. Thank you, guys.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.